Earth is facing a crisis. A crisis that we did not see coming. A crisis that we cannot stop. An unknown threat from outer space is heading our way. An external cosmic influence triggers changes within our planet. The core is going mad. Catastrophes on Earth are escalating. And we are totally unprepared. The world is divided. Some want to compete. Some want to fight. Some want to escape. But none of them can agree on what to do to prevent the impending global catastrophe that can destroy the whole civilization. The only way to stop this threat is to unite world's best scientists. But in a world where war and power are the only rules, that is impossible. There is a plan A and a plan B, but both plans are risky. Both plans are uncertain. Both plans demand a price. A price that will change our lives and the fate of humanity forever. It is time for us to pay the price. Now it is your turn to take action. Global crisis. Responsibility.
We all see around and noticed an alarming trend of river and lake drying across Africa. From the Zambezi to the Lake Chad, something never seen before is happening. But let's first go into the subject with Kanu and tell us what do you think is the cause and what is really happened, and do you see similar thing happening in Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you. Similar thing is happening in Nigeria, though not at such rate as it is happening in other African countries, like that you just mentioned. Um, Lake Chad is in Nigeria, which shares borders with Cameroon, with Niger Republic, and yeah, with some of the surrounding sub-Saharan African countries. Lake Chad used to be a very massive body of water that supplied the livelihood of these people living within these 3 or 4 countries. But the research that what research findings have shown is that in the last let me say 20 years, between 2001 and now, Lake Chad has really reduced, to about 90% of the water body. Most of the aquatic lives are even drying. I remember when I was in Meduguri. Meduguri is just a few kilometers to Chad. Um, it was fisher's heaven. You know, many people come to Chad to fish, but these days it's no longer so. And coupled with the fact that there are crises, this Boko Haram, terrorism, and all that around that area. But the truth is that Lake Chad is drying up, and it's confirmed by research that over 90% of the water is drying up. Not only Lake Chad, in South Africa too, the river, that is the Zambezi River, the river basin, which supplies about 8 countries in South Africa, especially countries of Angola, Botswana, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, Zambia, Tanzania, and even Zimbabwe. Research shows that the body of water is also drying up. So this is a very strange and very frightening phenomenon. And one thing that I must tell you too, from what research has found out, is that most of the conflict in Africa, also borders on these water bodies that are drying up. People that had their livelihood coming from the supply of water now, because of the drying of the water and the droughts around these areas, we find a situation where those places have become conflict zones. People are fighting for survival, and then all that military um, attacks and all that. So actually, in Africa, in Nigeria, yes, we are close to the Chad, and we benefit from the resources, the supply of the Chad. We are noticing that the water level has really decreased. And the other day, I was also reading that even the longest river in the world, that is the Nile River, I also read that it is decreasing in the quantity of its water. So it is a phenomenon that we ought to understand. It's attributed to climate change. But most of the writings that we read about, we always attribute climate change to, anthropogenic factor. It is due to, you know, pollution of the ocean and all that. But I must tell you that scientific research, especially minority scientific research from very concerned individuals, citizens of the world, uh, scientists from the Alatra International Movement, scientists that have been brought together under the umbrella of the Creative Society, have been able to, and some other independent scientists have been able to confirm to us that what is happening, this drying up of the river, is connected with the global climate cycle, which happens every 12,000 years. And then we are in that cycle at the moment. It's expected from the predictions of the scientists, it's something that we will really begin to feel the intensifying effect from now until sometime later in this year when the cycle will come in full bloom. So what they are saying is that as a result of this cycle, that the position of the Earth where we are in the solar system is that we are now exposed to external energy that is penetrating us and hitting the core of the Earth. As it hits the core of the Earth, strange things begin to happen. For example, the core gets heated up, and then the magma, around the core starts to melt, and as they melt, they expand, and as they expand, it leads to cracking of the earth crust, and the cracking of the earth crust is such that the water is now drawn down to to this depth, and as it is drawn down to this depth, it's as if, to use a layman's language, as if the earth is taking an inhale, that is breathing in, as if it has breathed in, and so you see the water are going down. So it is more of the impact of this cosmic effects hitting the core of the earth, which is also responsible for the crisis that we see in weather situations. We see floodings, we see earthquakes, we see volcanic eruptions, and of course we see droughts. You know, Scientists are attributing this to that cosmic impact that is hitting the core of the earth, which is the reason why the water levels are really drying, because as the earth crust opens, water seep down, and as they seep down, the unfortunate thing is that they react also with this magma, which leads to explosions on the sea or on the oceanic volcanic eruptions, which is also responsible for what we'll be witnessing in most recent times. So that is
Okay.
what I can tell you for now. That yes, it is a fact, it's established fact. Those of us in Nigeria know that the Chad is drying up. Those of us in Africa know that our rivers and lakes are also drying up, not just in Africa, but like Andrea will also confirm, in other continents of the world, in Europe, in Asia, body of waters are drying up. And the reason for this, which we attribute to climate change, is not because of the pollution of the oceans. Rather, it is as a result of a natural process, a cyclic process that happens every 12,000 years. Thank you.
Tell me, Kanu, in terms of the news in Nigeria and the trend, is it part of the mass media that is awareness is being given to the population, or is passing without being, speak about in the news?
Yeah, thank you. What happens is that the mass media, the mainstream mass media, reports these things, but when they report it, the attribution is always that it is due to, the mainstream explanation of climate change. We attribute it to, industrial pollutions, and then they tell us that, well, the international body is working on this. There have been meetings, world bodies, where there's an agreement to reduce the industrial pollutions, and then to turn on to green green energy. But of course, the thing is that they don't give us the details the way it should be. Like in Nigeria, just last early this month, there was a terrible flooding, just a terrible flooding that destroyed and displaced so many people's properties and lives. But you see, when it is reported, even though they attribute it to climate change, but the explanation for that climate change is what they are not really going deep down to tell people that it is a natural phenomenon that is happening, and that the way it is happening is the cause of all that we're experiencing, the increase in the heat wave, the increase in droughts, and then the quantity of rainfall that we have in a day whenever it decides to rain is more than usual, you know. So they are reporting it, but the details of why it is happening is what has eluded most people, because the mainstream journalists are not really doing this, because they also are reporting as they have got from the international news media or news bodies.
Thank you. So, Andrea, I want to take your story about that, your angle in terms of how is it perceived in your community in terms of writers. How is it? Is it part of the general discussion, or it seems to be still hidden and will basically be placed on the center of any discussion or any article in the few years, or is actually placed in the center of the discussions?
Well, unfortunately, it's not yet being the center of all discussions. Like Kanu mentioned, the center of all discussions is still the anthropogenic factor of the climate change, of the global warming. But this is unfortunately not the whole picture, because climate is actually a really complex mechanism, and it cannot be understood just from watching one factor that affects it. For sure, anthropogenic factor is one of the factors, because we polluted the ocean, and we are also polluting the air, but it's really more complicated than that. And the planetary cataclysms that are rising up cannot be explained by just this factor. But if you look at what the scientists of the ALLATRA international movement that are also working in the Creative Society project are saying, and all the data collected, it shows that it really, the cycle of 12,000 years can really explain what's going on, because even in the previous cycles, very similar phenomena occurred on the planet. We have seen the volcanoes waking up, the earthquakes, the floods, the huge floods, and this kind of shows that it's reoccurring phenomenon that's happening cyclically, and unfortunately we are now entering the peak of this cycle, and just by switching to the green energy and by reducing the CO2 emissions, we are not going to solve this problem, because the data shows that even though for 30 years now we have been trying to solve the climate problem with reducing the CO2 emissions, we still can see the rising of the climate catastrophes. So there must have been something that we are not that we are missing in this picture, and that we should urgently include in finding the solutions, because otherwise we will be too late and we won't be able to do anything to change the course of the events. For now, we still have some time, and that is why it's really important to understand the complexity of the climate itself, and to take into consideration all the factors, and to seriously study this cycle, and to try to find out what exactly is this external influence that is impacting the core of our planet, but not just our planet, also all the other planets in our solar system.
Okay, so you speak about a lot about the cycle of the 12 years. So at this point, do we have an explanation in terms of, can we explain what is exactly the cycle of the 12 years and how it does impact our climate, and especially our rivers and river sources? Yeah.
Yes, we know that the cycle is repeating. That is for sure, because there is a lot of data confirming it. But what we still don't know is what kind of energy impacts the course of the planets in our solar system. So this is where what Kanu already mentions. This is why we urgently need the scientific potential to unite, to sit at one table, the best scientists, the top minds of our world, to find out exactly what kind of energy is this. Because if we know what this energy is and how it affects our core, that means that we can make some shield so it stops affecting the core. But of course, if we want to do that, we have to know exactly what kind of energy it is. And this is why the volunteers of the Creative Society project all over the world are now urging the people to speak up, because we have to create, public demand. We have to make this theme mainstream, and we cannot count on the mass media to be the first to do that. We, the ordinary people, have to speak up and speak loud enough to be heard also by those who are making decisions, because it affects all of us.
Yes, thank you for that. Going back to Kanu, in terms of the reality today, we see the same phenomenon applying to Ethiopia, like you spoke about Congo and the other part of Africa. You see the waterway of Africa being really affected. Tell us so far, does it have a real direct impact to the economy, especially in agriculture so far?
It's very tangy. Let me give you an example with what we have in Nigeria. Sometime around 2009 to 2000, and even now it is still there, to 2015-16, which was the peak. We had this crisis where we are experiencing constant farmers and herders crisis, which eventually coalesced into terrorism. We call it Boko Haram, ISIS, and all that militants. We are attacking farmers and farm settlements, burning down houses and burning down farm barns and all that, and killing people and all that. I remember our president then said that the people that were being suspected and accused, the Fulani ethnic group in Nigeria, the president of Nigeria then, who was Muhammad Buhari, said that the Fulani he knew, didn't used to carry guns, but that these ones are carrying AK-47. But then, because of the politics of that crisis, we didn't take his words seriously. But on a closer or sober reflection, we found that the president actually was trying to pass across that, look, the people displaced in other African countries like Central African Republic, like Ethiopia, like you mentioned, like places where we had this climate crisis, they could no longer farm. They do not have places to graze their animals, and then there's that push, that they encroached into other people's countries and lands, and because of the lack of accommodation in our societies, these people had to find a settlement by force, and this had led to guerrilla warfare and what we're experiencing today as banditry and terrorism and all that. In other African countries too, like I just mentioned, between is it Angola, in Botswana, in Namibia, we could also have the same experience where in African countries, look at it, that Ethiopia we mentioned about, due to drought, due to famine, uh, people, going to wars, there are military actions and all that. You look at what happened in Sudan. So what I'm trying to say in effect is that this climate crisis, this drying up of water, the drought, the flooding, all this had direct economic impact because people are losing their source of livelihood. And when people lose their source of livelihood and want to survive, they survive in ways that we cannot explain, taking military actions, in engaging in warfare, in wasting lives and all that. And then poverty is on the increase, unemployment is on the increase, and then there can be peace. That is why we see in Africa, it is more or less that most places are crisis reading. this has a direct attribute to this climate crisis. In Nigeria, people are crying of rising cost of foodstuff, but of course there will be rising cost of foodstuff. There will be rising cost of livelihood because the farm produce, the food produce, water and all that are not sufficient anymore. People are out of jobs. So these things are coming at very inflated prices, and then the livelihood is not that easy to to come by. So yes, Tangi, it has not indirect a direct effect on the economic life of the people, and that is why everybody should be interested in what is happening to our climate. What is this 12,000 year cycle? What do we need to rein in this monster that is ravaging and rampaging our lands? And then what is there? What future do we have, not just for ourselves, but for our children, for Africa as a whole? Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. So I will go to Andrea, carry on with the same line of discussion in terms of, we can see that this phenomenon just happened in Africa is part of a global crisis. So what I would like to find out is like, how does it affect the earth breathe, knowing that the water is part of also, all the system of the planet breathe, and what do you think that will be the consequence in long term?
Yes, this is a huge problem actually, because water is one of the basic needs that we people need to function, and we need it for economy to function and so on. And this is actually not isolated phenomenon, not just in Africa. Unfortunately, it's happening all over the world, and we can see the data that and observe the disappearing of the water bodies in all continents of the planet. And that means that this is a planetary scale process, and rivers and lakes and waterfalls are drying up all over the world. And according to the research by American scientists, water levels in the world are water levels in the world, our largest rivers, have dropped significantly, not just in the last 20 years, as Kanu mentioned, because this process has been, like building up in these last two decades, but already for the last 50 years, we can observe that process going on. And thousands of rivers and reservoirs are disappearing. And on the other hand, we have very powerful downpours. So water is seeping down, and we have more powerful downpours, which have the consequence of large floods. And this is happening all over the world, and it's becoming, of course, a big problem because of all the things that Kanu mentioned. It's already happening not just in Africa, but also, I don't know, in China, in Russia. We had huge floods also last summer, and 2/3 of Slovenia was affected by these floods. And it just happened, in 4 hours of intense rains, and all the biggest rivers in Slovenia flooded, and people lost their homes, they lost everything. And of course, this is impacting all the levels of our existence. And for example, in China, despite frequent floods, more than 27,000 rivers have dried up and disappeared, which means this is 50% of all the rivers they have. And in Ukraine, for example, 10,000 rivers have disappeared over the past 30 years. And also the wells are drying up on one hand. On the other hand, they're observing that the water in the wells is starting to boil, which is actually connected to what Kanu mentioned in the beginning, that the magma is heating up because of what's happening with the core of our planet. And that also means that this underground water is getting extremely hot, and it's evaporating. And this means that is why we have this also this strong downpours and floods. And so everything is very, very intensifying all these processes, and not in a good way. And these water shortages are affecting everything. Also in India, there is a huge crisis connected with water, and of course, this has the dangerous consequences because we live in the consumer format of society, and we don't live in a society where human lives and well-being won't be on the first place, and this is why the conflicts then appear because this basic things that we should have as human beings to live a decent life are not being guaranteed. And the climate crisis, of course, is not helping at all to anyone on the planet.
Yes, we can see that from the Amazon to the Arctic planets. We see the change. I would like to know, how does it affect the water cycle, the cycle of water, and also many people wonder, where does this water go? Can you give us some idea?
Yes, actually, what Kanu mentioned in the beginning, because of this impact to the core, the Earth started to move faster, to turn faster, and to widen at the equator, and that means that these cracks get the in the core of not the core in the ground get these micro cracks, and this water actually like it goes down, it goes underground, and because of this magma getting hotter and hotter and rising up from the core, that means that this water also evaporates, and that means there is much more water vapor in the atmosphere, and so that's why I said it's very complex mechanism, the climate, because on one way we have droughts and at the same time we have floods. It's like it's almost confusing, but if you understand how this cycle works and what is actually causing it and how it influence all the mechanisms that are actually going on our planet, then you get a bigger picture and you can understand better why why we can see all of these catastrophes happening right now on our planet.
Thank you. So thank you. Before we go to our commercial and our break, let's go back to Kenu, and I want to impose this question on you in terms of uh, when you speak about the inhaling of the earth, what do we mean, and how dangerous it is for our civilization?
Yeah, I will give you an instance of what happened. I think it happened in history sometime in the 18th century, if I'm not mistaken, sometime around either 1795 or thereabout. It is called the Great Lisbon earthquake. It was an earthquake that happened in Lisbon. At that time when it happened, according to reports, that people were around the sea area, and people were maybe holidaying, maybe people that were looking for means of livelihood, farmer, fishermen, and all that. That suddenly it was as if the waters in the ocean were receding, as if they were receding, and people were like thrilled and were like wondering, wow, what is this? Water is disappearing, water is retreating into the earth, and people like gathered. It's not like now that we have cameras and all that. Maybe we'll also gather like them and want to take video of what was happening. So, according to that report, the where water used to be suddenly became dry ground, and people were like, what happened to all the water? So I will take that as if it's an inhaling, the earth inhaled, as if it breathed in, sucked in the water. And then from that report, suddenly after some minutes, the water came back, but with such terrifying force that the surge was such that so many people were drowned. You know, so when we say the inhale of the earth, it's just like trying to like use a metaphor. We are trying to like give a description of what is happening. That the earth is as if it is breathing in. That breathing in, like I told you from the beginning, is because as as the core of the earth is being heated up and magma is expanding, and then the earth crust. It's also, as a result of this impact of the expansion, also begins to crack like towards the equator. So what happened is that as a result of this crack, water from the ocean, water from rivers, water from lakes are seeping down. And as it is seeping down, as if it is a great breath in that the earth is, is doing. So, like that great earthquake of the list of that happened in Lisbon in that 1795, the danger of the earth's hell is that when the earth will expel the water that it has sunk in, it is going to be devastating because it's going to flood the earth with water. There will be torrential rain, like we're having flooding and all that everywhere. It had happened, and at a minor degree, that I said in history was the great earthquake of Lisbon. You can read it up. So that is just like to explain a little of what is happening at the present moment, because what we're experiencing now, because it coincided with the 12,000 year cycle, is that this inhalation, this breathing in of the earth, we have terrible consequences when it breathes out, because it's definitely going to breathe out. It's definitely going to return these waters back, and it is not going to be good for the planet. That is why we must look for solution before it exhales. Thank you.
Thank you, Kanu. Thank you. That be our way of the excelling of the planet will maybe create more catastrophe that we have so far. So we will take our break and we'll be back after the commercial.
Earth is facing a crisis that we did not see coming, a crisis that we cannot stop. An unknown threat from outer space is heading our way. An external cosmic influence triggers changes within our planet. The core is going mad. Catastrophes on Earth are escalating, and we are totally unprepared. The world is divided. Some want to compete. Some want to fight. Some want to escape. But none of them can agree on what to do to prevent the impending global catastrophe that can destroy the whole civilization. The only way to stop this threat is to unite world's best scientists. But in a world where war and power are the only rules, that isn't possible. There is a plan A and a plan B, but both plans are risky. Both plans are uncertain. Both plans demand a price. A price that will change our lives and the fate of humanity forever. It is time for us to pay the price. Now it is your turn to take action. Global crisis. Responsibility.
And live we have Kanu and our sister Andrea from the Creative Society speaking about our climate change. Today we have a beautiful topic. We're speaking about planet uh, being losing its water, especially in the lake region, in the rivers across the world, and we want to know what is happening. And for that, we have our brother from the Creative Society talking to us live from Nigeria and Slovenia. So we go into the second part of our show, and we will start by speaking to Andrea about the excel, the catastrophe who might happen when the planet excel. I want to know from you. We're seeing so far Dubai crisis and other uh, crises around the world. Do we expect more violent catastrophe upcoming, or it might stay the same level?
Well, unfortunately, it's going to rise the catastrophes, because we are just entering the peak of the climate cycle in the end of this year, and we have seen in 2023, in the last year, how things began to escalate, and we can see now we are now in in the end of the 4th month of this year, and there is not one day that catastrophes happen not in just one place, but on many places on our planet. So this is going to escalate, and this is why it is so important to create this unified scientific center with the best scientists of the world to find the solution to mitigate, to slow down what's going to happen, so we will have time to find the solution for this external impact that is actually the cause of everything that is happening. And there have been some solutions proposed, but they're not being taken seriously yet. So this is why we have to make this theme mainstream. We have to talk about, we have to talk, everyone has to talk about it, because this is really something that affects the lives of every one of us and affects the existence of our planet itself. And we know that this is our only home. We don't have a planet B, so we have to do everything that is in our power to find the solutions, to step together and to find the solutions together, because this is our common problem.
Yes. So we see around the world, people seem to be surprised when such catastrophe happen. Will you say that it's time to have big campaign, preventing or preparing humanity for bigger events coming? And we also see, according to different social media platforms, some westernized country building some specific building like bunkers and exactly etc. Sorry, do you say that it's time to be realistic about that and think about such solution?
Well, definitely, it's good to be prepared. It's better to be prepared. It's good to have, I don't know, some backpack prepared if something happened. Because when we talked with the victims and the witnesses of the climate disasters, they all said the same, that it happened so fast and so unexpected that they didn't have time to actually do anything. And this is why we have to take this seriously, because for example, there were floods that happened so fast that people didn't have time to go, to leave the house and to go to some safe place. They have to climb the roofs of their houses, and they were up there waiting for someone to save them, without anything, without water, without food, without I don't know, some dry clothes. So this is not this is a very reasonable thing to do, to prepare, and this is what every one of us can do, to prepare something, because when it happens, you just take that backpack, for example, and you do your best to leave that danger place and to save your life. Unfortunately, this is what is happening right now, and of course, the big campaign should be would be very, very reasonable also, but I'm not sure if we can expect that all the media are going to just start to talk about it. This is what why the volunteers of the Creative Society project are encouraging people to share this information, to inform themselves, because if you know what is really going on, then you can take some measures and do something and inform the people that don't know. And this is really important right now, the information, the right information that can actually save lives.
Going back to Nigeria, Kanu, many think that it's time to mitigate the climate change. What are the measure taken in Africa from where you stand? Do you think also it's time to be realistic and to make sure that African people are ready, since it's happening most of the time very fast? What do you think we should do, and do you think that there's hope for African countries and cities who have not yet reached the development in terms of architecture internationally, like Japan, who are building, who are ready to resist some, earthquake.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, sometimes when we talk about Africa, and it is quite true. You see, we talk about Africa still as if because they termed us developing countries or among the undeveloped countries. We think that we don't have the resources, we don't have the manpower. I remember that in Malawi, we have a scientist that invented the free fuel energy. That is a generator that runs without needing fuel for generating its power. When you look at most of the outstanding scientists in the world, you see Africans are also there, doing their best. So I also want to think that it is high time that it boils down to what we as people, how we understood what is happening to us. If we continue to believe that it is something that we could go sit down at a tea party and discuss and talk about importing green energy to Africa and think about reducing, cutting down on industrial pollutions, well, that is already outmoded version of the climate causes of climate change. The what we know today is that this thing is happening and it will happen, but then there is a solution, and that solution can be developed, and that is when we have a unified scientific center, which Africa should also be part of this. So I believe that it is time that wherever we are in Africa, it is time to mobilize. It's time to also let our people know that we are part of this global unified scientific center. Let Africans take part in it. And about talking about being prepared, yes, when you have information at your fingertips, then you know what to prepare for. For now, our preparation is maybe when it happens, government will come, give us some emergency and reliefs, and maybe for government it's an opportunity for them to solicit for international funding. It is more than that. And when we understand what is happening, then we will not just be waiting for international funding. We will not just be waiting for government to send relief. We will make sure that we also, as people, are prepared by sharing this information. Let people know what is coming. And when we know what is coming, let's be prepared. Wherever we are, nothing is wrong about packing some survival kits. Nothing is wrong about stocking some medicine that you may need, stocking some dry clothes, stocking some food, and being ready so that in case anything happens, at least we should be able to take some first aid measures before whatever help can come should come. But most importantly, I must tell you, Tangi, the preparation that we as Africans need to make is to understand what is happening and know that we too can contribute to that scientific center. We have the men, we have the resources. It's all about the goodwill. And if we have that goodwill, mobilize, what I mean by mobilize, sensitize people, let everybody know that this solution is not just going to be for Africa alone, it's not going to be for Europe alone. It is a threat to total existence on the world. And if we understand that, then everybody will take it seriously and know that it is time that whatever way, whatever small way we can, let's contribute in sharing this information, letting people know what is coming and that there is a solution, and that solution can actually save humanity if we have our scientists working unrestrained, unconditionally to expand on the solutions that have been found. Let me just mention something before I go, Tangi.
Mm-hmm.
You see, there was a report that I know got out from Russia sometime early this year. I think it was Dr. Egon Chelakan that made that revelation. Russia had been experimenting on this weather equipment that controls uh, catastrophes that are happening. And so, for a number of years, about 10 years, Russia has been experiencing minimal climate disasters. Not that they are not happening, but the frequency and the intensity with which they are happening were being controlled. That was because Russia implemented a certain scientific device that could control weather. Although the scientists have been expelled from Russia because of some crisis that started sometime last year. But what we are saying is that that type of technology can be developed further. It's already in existence. All it needs is for people, scientific minds, people to unite, and then let's develop that instrument, that device, and see if we will not be able to find solution to this problem, which I'm sure we can find solution to it. But so far now, people should be prepared. People should seek information and know what is happening, and that is the only way we can at least save ourselves until a perfect solution is found. Thank you.
Thank you, Kanu. Thank you, Andrea. And thank you for your wise word, Mr. Kanu. And I hope that our listener took a good note of all this information. And thank you for joining us as we explored the earth, breathe, and the mystery of disappearing water. Remember that the future of our planet is in our hands. Remember that we are the future. Do you remember that as the Creative Society uh, told us, we need to work together. It's time to exchange knowledge. It's time to prepare. It's time to mobilize, like can you say, so that we can work as one and go around this cycle. I hope that we find a solution. I hope that we start to talk. We will see you next week, same time, same place. Creative Society Impulse Radio. The show is called Society of Tomorrow. See you.
Earth is facing a crisis that we did not see coming, a crisis that we cannot stop. An unknown threat from outer space is heading our way. An external cosmic influence triggers changes within our planet. The core is going mad. Catastrophes on Earth are escalating, and we are totally unprepared. The world is divided. Some want to compete. Some want to fight. Some want to escape. But none of them can agree on what to do to prevent the impending global catastrophe that can destroy the whole civilization. The only way to stop this threat is to unite world's best scientists. But in a world where war and power are the only rules, that is impossible. There is a plan A and a plan B, but both plans are risky. Both plans are uncertain. Both plans demand a price. A price that will change our lives and the fate of humanity forever. It is time for us to pay the price. Now it is your turn to take action. Global crisis. Responsibility. Watch at creativesociety.com.